y'all, Josh here, and this is my review of Sylvester Stallone's The Expendables. Billed as the greatest action movie of all time, or at least the greatest conglomeration of action movie stars of all time, this movie is okay. You know what? I actually went into this movie with a huge amount of anticipation. I am a massive 80s action movie fan, and you know what? Just looking at this cast really made me salivate. I mean, Sylvester Stallone has already proven himself with directing jobs in the past, and still an enormously good action star in my mind. Jason Statham, I love him. Jet Li, how can you argue? And having cameos like Bruce Willis and Arnold Schwarzenegger, with the scene of all three of them together, Sylvester Stallone that is, and those two, really just blew my mind in of itself. And a lot of specific scenes in this movie blew my mind and were worth the price of admission. Particularly a fight scene between Jet Li and Dolph Lundgren, which I never thought I would see on any screen ever. Really was great. But overall, I didn't think this movie lived up to its potential. There are a lot of people in here, and a lot of them actually do a surprisingly good job. I've never seen Randy Couture in an action job before, or an action movie, or acting job at all. But, he did a pretty decent job. He seemed like he could be a fun character, not a great actor, but a fun character in this type of movie. But he just didn't get any screen time. I think that's the problem with this large of a cast, that none of them really got any screen time. Only the main three, Sylvester Stallone, Jason Statham, and Jet Li, even less emphasis on Jet Li, really got much to do. Mickey Rourke is actually in this movie and does a really fantastic job. He has this one scene mid-movie that really just has the camera focus in right on him as he tells a story. Really powerful in and of itself. There's one really beautifully shot briefing sequence between Jet Li, Jason Statham, Sylvester Stallone, and all of them, and it really worked for me. Sylvester Stallone's tendency to use very extreme close-ups in this movie worked in some situations and kind of hindered the action. I'm getting off track here, and my point is that there's a lot of really enjoyable things individually in this movie. I particularly like the silly vibe that the movie does give off, that these people are so badass. I mean, they wear like black leather clothing, they drive like Harley Davidson motorcycles, or like kind of Ford cars with flames on the sides, and they all wear sunglasses. It's just ridiculous. I mean, it's so macho that it's almost laughable. But I think that's the movie's problem. It's not quite laughable all the time. And I'm not saying that this be a comedy, but I was expecting this to verge more on a kind of orgiastic celebration of the 80s violent 80s action movies. And this really didn't seem to do that. It kind of wanted to ground the story. I didn't think that was really appropriate for the material. I mean, if you were going to make a very serious man on a mission movie, then you can't anchor it in this kind of love of 80s action movies, I think. I mean, you can do it, but I just don't think Sylvester Stallone did it very well, I should say. And I like Sylvester Stallone as a director. He's really great. I like him as an actor, quite good, but I just really didn't love this movie. Anyways, I realize I'm really going off track here, kind of just touching on a bunch of things at once, so let's get straight to it. Basically, Sylvester Stallone leads a team of the early mercenaries called the Expendables, who is composed of quite a few different people that I'm not even going to bother naming, but the majority of them, like I said, don't really get much screen time. Randy Couture, Terry Crews don't really do a whole lot, other than kind of have their select scenes where they shine. But overall, the movie is basically about this team of mercenaries taking on a South American dictator and kind of just other story complications. There's a woman involved, as there always is, among other cliche plot devices. And I'm not arguing that these cliche plot devices ruin the movie, but just I didn't really get the tone the movie was going for, I guess. At times, it really seemed like that fun-loving, yeah, let's have a fucking blast doing this movie. And those parts were great. I loved them. Any scene where I can see Dolph Lundgren, Sylvester Stallone, and Jason Statham just hang out and shoot the shit, that is a movie I want to fucking watch. And honestly, the movie, like I said, was great during those parts. But then when the movie tried to get into these maudlin melodramatics, where Sylvester Stallone is like, oh man, I'm in love now, I should quit my job. But like I said, I didn't buy it. They didn't really enmesh well together in my mind. But there were some great parts to it. Overall, though, I just don't think that the movie really pulls it off. There's actually surprisingly little action in this movie, considering. The last half of this movie does have a great amount of it, but the first half is actually pretty dry. The climax of this movie really is overkill, but that's what I wanted to see more of in the movie. A lot of people are condemning the movie because of that. I'm not. I would have preferred more of that. Maybe not at the same time, but we're spread evenly throughout the movie. You get a lot of points where, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Sylvester Stallone. Again, great scene. didn't really make sense in the whole in the context. I mean, why wouldn't they shoot each other if they both have guns or knocked out of their guns? It's just to see two of them fight. And I like these kind of team ups of actors where it's like, who's gonna win, Dolph Lundgren and Jet Li kind of thing. But it just didn't really play on it as much as I thought they would. Overall, though, I did actually like the chemistry between the actors when it got to it. They had all these kind of typical like gang or mercenary quirks. One of them has to go to a psychiatrist. One of them is like, I got a love back home, but she can't know my job. And I have all these little silly things. They have the kind of typical uncaring leader. And, oh, my personal favorite is actually Jet Li, who has a constant problem, or constant issue with his size, always demanding more of a raise, because since he's smaller, he has to do twice the work just to get the same job done. That was really funny in of itself. The conversations between all of these characters were really great. Mickey Rourke does a fantastic job as kind of the briefing man, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis in their small roles basically play Arnold Schwarzenegger and Bruce Willis. But that one scene, the world practically imploded on its greatness. Unfortunately, that was only about 3 to 5 minutes of the movie. And again, I can't organize my thoughts more coherently than this on a movie like this. I'm getting back from it now. I apologize, this review is probably going to go up late because I'm busy for the next couple of days, but what can I say? The effects in this movie are what you expect, though. Despite costing only in a $60 to $80 million budget range, this movie does look like a huge budget movie. There is some kind of CG blood and violence, but majority of it I didn't find distracting. A lot of people question this in Rambo, in the original 2008 Rambo as well, but again, I didn't find it that much of a problem. This movie is so over the top in its action scenes that I mean, to call it unrealistic is like calling the kettle black, you know? Pot calling the kettle black. It just seems ridiculous. To me. The sound in this movie is also incredibly boisterous. They had some great music in and of itself. Overall, didn't really stick out to me. What can I say about the Expendables? If you are watching these commercials thinking it's going to be the greatest movie ever like I was, then you know what? I'm not going to convince you to not see this. I don't want to convince you not to see this. There are some moments in this movie that are genuinely worth watching. And there's some great action in certain bits, and some really great chemistry between some of the actors. Overall, though, I just found it a little disappointing. And I imagine that I am probably one of the most disappointed people because of that. I mean, I was looking forward to this so much. But what can I say? Maybe you could just YouTube certain parts of it if you really want. I don't think it's necessarily a theater type movie per se. I mean, it's on a big scale sometimes, but I think you could probably get away with this at a rental if you really wanted to. Regardless, I think action movie fans should see this. It's not the greatest movie, but it could kill an afternoon. Have a good time with your friends, maybe have a few beers late at night, go to it, and it will definitely get the job done.